In October 1973, a 23-year-old man left his dormitory and was never seen again. For nearly 5 decades, the case remained a haunting mystery until a chance discovery brought a breakthrough. Douglas Hallowell Brick was born on October 12, 1950, to Harold and Donna Hallowell Brick. He spent his early years in Pocatello, Idaho. As a student at Pocatello High School, Douglas graduated in 1968 as a top scholar. He actively participated in multiple school organizations, including the Boys Council, Key Club, and German Club. He also served as a delegate to Boys State, showcasing his leadership potential. With clear ambitions for his future, he enrolled at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City to continue his education. On his 23rd birthday on October 12, 1973, Douglas was last seen leaving Austin Hall, his dorm on campus. His car was later found parked nearby, and inside were his belongings, packed with care, implying that he may have been preparing to go somewhere. Near the vehicle, the investigators found his wallet discarded on the ground. These clues immediately raised concerns, especially after further investigation revealed troubling details about Douglas's recent behavior. Prior to his disappearance, Douglas had taken several unusual steps. He had withdrawn from many of his university classes and closed his bank accounts. Even more concerning, records showed that he had purchased a gun and 500 rounds of .22 ammunition. When his dorm room was searched, it was discovered that one box of the ammunition was missing. These findings prompted an extensive search effort by the University of Utah Police and Salt Lake County Search and Rescue. They focused on the foothills behind the university campus. Despite their efforts, no trace of Douglas was ever found. After the initial investigation, a friend came forward claiming to have seen Douglas driving a truck on the route between Ogden, Utah and Pocatello, Idaho. According to the friend, Douglas said that he had left college and was planning to begin a new life. He reportedly asked that his family not be told of his whereabouts. However, this sighting became the last known contact. For decades, Douglas's disappearance remained unsolved. Lost police records, fruitless search efforts, and varying accounts of his last movements kept the case shrouded in uncertainty. After almost 5 decades, in 2022, the University of Utah Police Department brought in a crime data analyst named Nicole Mitchell. While working with Utah's statewide Information and Analysis Center, Mitchell uncovered a forgotten cold case, Douglas Brick's disappearance. At the time, Major Heather Sturzenegger was serving as the investigation's lieutenant. Upon learning about the overlooked case, she agreed without hesitation to reopen it. Detective John Dial was assigned to the investigation after Sturzenegger received a promotion, but he quickly realized the case file offered very little to begin with. As they began piecing together what they could, one lead came from a journal entry written by Douglas's mother, Donna. In the entry, she recalled a meeting with a psychic shortly after her son's disappearance. The psychic allegedly described specific details, including the claim that Douglas had gone to the foothills above the university campus. Though unconventional, this clue aligned with a location that had been extensively searched back in 1973. The first real breakthrough came when investigators found a record of a 2018 phone call from Douglas's sister to University Dispatch, inquiring about her brother's case. That call became the starting point for a more targeted effort. Using the information from that call, Detective Dial traveled to California to meet with Douglas's sister. During the visit, she provided a DNA sample via cheek swab, hoping it would help identify her brother if he had ever been listed as a John Doe in the national system. The sample was submitted for comparison, but the results yielded no matches. Despite the setback, Douglas's sister also provided Dial with contact details for his girlfriend at the time of his disappearance. The woman was living out of state and offered helpful background about Douglas, although nothing concrete emerged to suggest a new direction for the search. Months passed without a breakthrough, and the case remained unsolved until October 2024. That month, a group of hunters stumbled upon human remains, specifically skull fragments, in the foothills near the University of Utah. The discovery was immediately flagged, and DNA testing was ordered. In May 2025, the results came back with a match to the DNA sample provided by Douglas's sister. At last, the decades-long mystery of what happened to Douglas had a definitive answer. The remains were his. Following the DNA confirmation, the University of Utah police formally closed the case even though it could not be confirmed how he lost his life. On May 3, 2025, Douglas's family was notified of the results. The family said in a statement, "We never stopped hoping for answers about Doug's disappearance. We are relieved to finally have some answers." After 52 years, this result, while sad, is nothing short of a miracle. In June 1997, a man and his daughter stumbled upon a dismembered torso in a plastic container at Hempstead Lake State Park in New York. Years later, in 2011, the skeletal remains of a child were found near Jones Beach, eventually linked to the same unidentified woman through DNA. But they would only be identified more than a decade later. On June 28, 1997, a chilling discovery was made in Hempstead Lake State Park, located in Lakeview, New York. While walking through the wooded area, a man and his daughter came across a Rubbermaid container. Inside, it was a woman's dismembered torso, along with a floral pillowcase and a red towel. The victim's head, arms, and lower legs had been removed and were never recovered. The container was found approximately 200 yards north of Peninsula Boulevard, near McDonald Pond, on the west side of Lake Drive. With no immediate clues to the victim's identity, the investigation initially stalled. One of the only identifiable features on the body was a tattoo located on the woman's left breast. Hoping to generate leads, the investigators shared an image of the tattoo in a national tattoo magazine. Their efforts paid off when Steve Cullen, a tattoo artist from Connecticut, came forward. He recalled giving the tattoo to a young black woman, estimated to be around 18 or 19 years old, who had visited his shop with an aunt and cousin. During the appointment, she mentioned being from either the Bronx or Long Island, and said she was staying in Connecticut due to issues with a boyfriend. The investigators began referring to her as Peaches, based on the tattoo design. In April 2011, 14 years later, more human remains were found near Jones Beach State Park. DNA testing conducted in December 2016 confirmed that the newly discovered remains belonged to the same individual known as Peaches. Additionally, the remains of a young child were located nearby. Forensic testing revealed that the child, identified only as Baby Doe, was the biological daughter of Peaches. This development confirmed the victims were mother and daughter, though their true names were still unknown at that time. Although this significant breakthrough provided clarity about the victims' relationship, the case remained unresolved. After another 4 years went by, in 2020, the investigators intensified their efforts to identify the unknown woman and child by turning to advanced forensic methods. Nassau County authorities and the FBI partnered with Othram. Through their analysis, the Othram scientists determined that the woman known for years only as Peaches was Tanya Denise Jackson, originally from Alabama and born on October 22, 1970. Using the same genetic techniques, researchers were also able to identify the young child found near Jones Beach State Park. She was confirmed to be Tatiana Marie Dykes. After decades without answers, Nassau County Police formally revealed their identities to the public on April 23, 2025. The authorities explained that the delay in the announcement was necessary to properly notify relatives and to make burial arrangements. Tanya served in the United States Army between July 1993 and February 1995, during which time she was stationed in Texas, Georgia, and Missouri. After completing her military service, she moved to Brooklyn, New York, where she found work at a medical office, possibly as a medical assistant. Tatiana was born on March 17, 1995, in Texas. At the time of their demises, Tanya was no longer in contact with her family, and neither she nor her daughter had ever been officially reported missing. Tanya and Tatiana were eventually laid to rest in their home state of Alabama, receiving full military honors in recognition of Tanya's service in the U.S. Army. The discovery of their remains in locations not far from the sites connected to the Gilgo Beach serial crimes raised questions about a possible link. That case involves a series of unsolved crimes, mostly of female prostitutes, found along Long Island's South Shore. Although Tanya and Tatiana were found in areas close to those crime scenes, law enforcement has not confirmed any connection between their demises and the Gilgo Beach investigation. In 2023, Rex Heuermann was arrested and charged in several of the Gilgo Beach cases, but he has not been implicated in ending the lives of Tanya and her daughter. Despite identifying the victims, the case remains unsolved. The investigation is ongoing, with detectives still working to uncover what happened and who was responsible. The authorities continue to appeal to the public for any information that could help bring the case to a close. A reward of $25,000 is being offered for details that lead to an arrest and conviction. Law enforcement is particularly interested in speaking with anyone who may have interacted with Tanya during her time in Brooklyn. In 1991, the body of a 27-year-old woman was found stabbed multiple times by the roadside in St. Cloud, Florida. Thanks to advances in DNA technology, the perpetrator was discovered and arrested. Julia Sue Wilbanks was born in 1964 and originally came from Elaine, Arkansas. She grew up in a financially stable environment, but her life took a turn when she relocated to Osceola County, Florida. In Florida, Julia became entangled in prostitution and struggled with illegal substance addiction. Julia was last seen in the McLaren Circle area of Kissimmee, Florida. She was reportedly walking through the neighborhood, though it remains unclear where she was headed. That brief sighting would be the last time anyone saw her alive. On September 23, 1991, her lifeless body was discovered off Neptune Road, roughly half a mile west of what is now Old Canoe Creek Road in St. Cloud. The discovery was made by a group of motorists who noticed her remains and flagged down a passing police officer. Julia had been deceased for over 24 hours by the time the authorities arrived. The crime was brutal. She had been stabbed approximately 17 times, with fatal wounds inflicted to her heart. The investigators immediately launched an inquiry into her case, collecting physical evidence and attempting to piece together her final movements. However, the investigation faced immediate hurdles. Although a possible suspect's blood was found on the shorts Julia was wearing, the technology at the time limited the scope of DNA comparisons. Throughout the 1990s, the evidence was tested multiple times against various individuals, but no match was ever made, and the case eventually fell into the category of unsolved cases. In 2012, after 2 decades, the investigators took a renewed step in Julia's cold case by submitting the unknown DNA profile to a company that specialized in genetic genealogy. For years, this method produced no solid leads, but the case remained active in the background, waiting for science to catch up to the evidence. By early 2025, the genetic genealogy search finally produced a breakthrough, identifying a primary suspect, Gene Stuller. The investigators learned that Stuller had lived near Julia's last known address back in 1991, placing him in close proximity. All that remained was to confirm whether his DNA matched the profile found on the victim. The detectives then began a period of surveillance, watching for an opportunity to collect his DNA without direct confrontation. In March 2025, the authorities obtained a crucial piece of evidence: a straw discarded by Stuller that contained his DNA. Testing confirmed a match. On April 21st, Stuller was arrested at his home in Apopka, Florida, where neighbors said he had lived for about 2 decades. He was charged in the second-degree slaying and with disturbing a deceased body. Despite the shocking nature of the charges, many residents in the area were stunned, having known Stuller as a friendly and outgoing man. One neighbor described Stuller as a nice fella and expressed disbelief that someone they had lived beside for years could be accused of such a crime. Stuller remains in custody as the investigation moves forward. The St. Cloud Police Department emphasized that justice delayed does not have to mean justice denied, especially as new tools allow them to revisit evidence with fresh precision. One night in September 1989, an 18-year-old woman left her job at a West Springfield, Missouri club and vanished into the dark. For decades, her case remained unsolved, stalled by the limitations of forensic technology. But a new round of DNA testing shattered the silence. Jennifer Williams, born in 1971, was an 18-year-old woman working as a topless dancer. She was married to Jeff Williams, and the couple had exchanged vows at a courthouse chapel in Tulsa on October 24, 1987. Their relationship was described as close and loving, and despite her line of work, Jeff often spoke of Jennifer as a hardworking woman and a good person. On the night of September 7, 1989, around 10 p.m., Jennifer left her job at the Body Shop, a club located in West Springfield, Missouri, now known as Centerfold. She was expected to return home, or at least stop by her husband's workplace, but she never arrived at either location. Her sudden disappearance sparked concern, and a search effort was quickly initiated to locate her. Witnesses last reported seeing Jennifer walking in the direction of her husband's business, but after that point, there were no confirmed sightings. Days passed with no sign of her, and fear grew as the silence continued. Then, on the 12th day following her disappearance, a group of teenagers made a horrifying discovery: Jennifer's body. She had been indecently assaulted, and her life was ended, leaving behind her 1-year-old son. Her remains were found in Springfield, Missouri. The following day, Jeff was arrested. He was the prime suspect in his wife's case, but he also violated his probation on a charge of reckless handling of a firearm. Despite the urgency of the case, law enforcement faced serious limitations in their ability to gather definitive evidence. At the time, forensic technology, particularly DNA testing, was still in its infancy and not widely accessible for detailed analysis. As a result, the investigation faced significant hurdles. The case quickly went cold. For 3 decades, the case of Jennifer remained without resolution until 2019, when Jennifer's assault kit was finally tested using modern technology. However, the results at that time were inconclusive, offering no clear path forward. It was not until 2024 that another round of DNA testing would lead to a major development in the case. This time, the improved analysis techniques yielded results that pointed directly to a suspect. The authorities identified 62-year-old Paul Bowles as the individual connected to the crime against Jennifer Williams. At the time of his identification, he was being held at the Fulton State Hospital in Callaway County, Missouri, on unrelated charges and was contacted by detectives. On April 17, 2025, Bowles was arrested and formally charged in connection with the brutal crime. He was booked into the Callaway County Jail, and the charges brought against him included second-degree slaying, forcible assault, and forcible sodomy. In a statement posted to Facebook following the announcement, Jennifer's husband, Jeff, wrote a message to his wife. "Your perpetrator took something from all of us. The world was a better place with you in it." In the early hours of February 9, 2005, a cab driver picked up 3 passengers in Brooklyn, New York. Hours later, his body was discovered. Nearly 2 decades later, a breakthrough came when advancements in DNA technology uncovered new evidence. Mureed Hussain was born in 1970 in Pakistan. At 35 years old, he lived in Brooklyn, New York, with his wife Asma and their 2 young sons, Huzaifa and Safwan. Mureed had previously worked in construction but shifted to cab driving when jobs in his trade became scarce. Seeking to provide for his family, he took up an overnight shift with a local Brooklyn livery service, a position he had held for only 3 weeks. In the early hours of February 9, 2005, Mureed accepted a fare from 3 men who requested transportation from Brooklyn to Enfield, Connecticut. Later that same morning, the officers from the Windsor Locks Police Department were dispatched to the intersection of South Main Street and School Street in Connecticut, where a deceased male was reported. The victim was identified as Mureed Hussain. Initial findings confirmed that he had been shot and slain, prompting an immediate joint investigation by Windsor Locks detectives and the Connecticut State Police. An autopsy later revealed that Mureed had sustained a fatal gunshot wound to the head. Just days after the discovery of his body, on February 12th, his minivan was located abandoned, back in Brooklyn. The vehicle's location raised more questions about the sequence of events and whether his assailants had returned to the city after the incident. The investigators began working tirelessly to piece together the circumstances surrounding Mureed's final hours. At the time of the investigation, the detectives identified 3 individuals as suspects. All were Pakistani nationals and reportedly high school friends from Brooklyn. Despite this significant lead, the authorities were unable to secure enough evidence to make arrests. Compounding the challenge, the suspects had already left the United States, severely hindering further investigative efforts. As a result, the case lost momentum and ultimately went cold. After nearly 2 decades, in February 2024, nearly 2 decades after Mureed's life was taken, the detectives from the Windsor Locks Police Department reopened the case. This renewed effort was driven by advances in forensic science and a fresh review of the evidence collected in 2005. Critical progress came through the application of updated DNA technology, which enabled the analysis of trace biological material recovered from both Mureed's clothing and the interior of his minivan. One of the pivotal breakthroughs in the case came when DNA found inside his cab matched that of Muhammad Ali, a 38-year-old man residing in Dublin, Ohio. Ali had previously lived in Brooklyn, New York. With the support of multiple agencies, including the Hartford State's Attorney's Office, Connecticut State Police, personnel at the State Forensic Lab in Meriden, and the New York City Police Department, Windsor Locks detectives secured an arrest warrant for Ali. He was formally charged with conspiracy to commit slaying and accessory to slaying. On March 26, 2025, U.S. Marshals located Ali in Dublin and arrested him without incident. He was transported to the Franklin County Jail, awaiting extradition to Connecticut. The investigation did not end with Ali's arrest. The detectives identified additional suspects, continuing to build their case. DNA evidence also linked Arfan Butt to the crime, one of the 3 original suspects identified in 2005. However, his life had been ended in Brooklyn in 2020, preventing any further legal action against him. The 3rd suspect named in the arrest warrant was NYPD Detective Rohail Khalid. Khalid had submitted his DNA in 2024, which reportedly connected him to the scene. Although Khalid claimed he had been working at a bagel shop during the time of the crime, the authorities found no hard evidence to corroborate his alibi. Khalid's attorney stated that his client had fully cooperated with the investigators and had been cleared of wrongdoing. Nonetheless, according to the arrest warrant, Windsor Locks police had originally named Ali, Khalid, and Butt as suspects back in 2005. The 3 men had been close friends who attended the same high school in Brooklyn. Windsor Locks Detective Sergeant Jeff Lampson said, "We believe the cab driver was in his van, was either compelled to pull over or pulled over under his own volition, was shot in the car and then pulled out, thrown over the guardrail, and his vehicle was located in Brooklyn." At a court appearance held in Hartford following Ali's arrest, members of Mureed's family, including his widow and sons, were present. Among them was Huzaifa, who had been just 4 years old when his father's life was ended. Now an adult, he expressed his appreciation for the investigative efforts, stating, "We are grateful for the work of the PD and the efforts of everyone involved to bring our family some peace." 21-year-old Safwan Mureed said he is trying to sort through mixed emotions of gratitude and grief. He said, "We had lost hope. We kind of stopped thinking about it. We just felt like this massive injustice happened, and then there was no resolution. There was no justice." Mureed's wife began to worry as time passed and he did not arrive home, 3 days before his body was found. Safwan said, "She said that she woke up and he was not home. She was not that worried, she just assumed he was out working. But you know, time keeps passing, and then eventually she starts getting worried. She started calling and he was not picking up. She was calling other people in the family. They did not know where he was either." Safwan also said, "I do not have any memories. My brother, the only memory he has was in the funeral home. His body was being taken back to Pakistan to be buried there, and someone held him up to see. That is the only thing he can recall." Safwan said the following of seeing Ali in court, "I never felt that angry. To tell you the truth, I did not want to see his face. I did. He looked pathetic. I really mean it. He looked disgusting. Muhammad Ali is currently being held on a $1 million bond. The prosecutors consider him a flight risk due to his earlier departure to Pakistan shortly after the crime, a move that had initially helped him evade justice for nearly 20 years.